Hello, everyone. Welcome to Mind Matters, empowering conversations for public safety professionals, where we'll discuss topics involving wellness and first responders. Join me on this journey of learning from subject matter experts in their various fields of psychology, medicine, leadership, and many more. You can find our show on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Let's get into the show. I'm your host, Elizabeth Morris. Good afternoon and welcome to Mind Matters. I'm your host, Elizabeth Morris, and I have Gary Fly, our co-host, joining us today, and a special guest, Captain Dan Willis out of the San Diego area. Captain Willis is the author of Bulletproof Spirit, the first responders' essential resource for protecting and Healing Mind and Heart book. Also, you can find more information about him at firstresponderwellness.com. So we are happy to have him today, and he actually is a presenter. We came across him after looking at a conference where he is going to be presenting at the Mental Health and Wellness Policing Summit coming up in November. So without further ado, hello, Captain Willis, and hello, Gary, and let's start our conversation about just all things wellness related and trauma support. So I will turn it over to you two.
Well, great. Thank you, Elizabeth. And also welcome, Captain Willis. As Elizabeth mentioned, we became aware of you in this through the Mental Health and Wellness Policing Summit. And we were really not familiar with the summit or with you and your work. And so we're excited to get to know you a little bit. Could you give us just a little bit of information or detail around what you'll be talking about at the summit, and maybe a little bit about the organization and what attracted you to them?
Sure, and thank you for having me on. I very much appreciate your guys' work and the opportunity to kind of share our experiences. So I worked for the La Mesa Police Department, which is east of San Diego, for 30 years, retired as a police captain, which was 10 years ago when Bulletproof Spirit came out. And for the past 10 years, I traveled the country. I've been to 41 states, training over 12,000 peace officers on trauma recovery, resilience, and wellness. And I just reach out to conferences all over the country and also internationally, and came across the wellness conference in Atlanta coming up in November. And they were kind enough to ask me to come out and share. And I'll be presenting on many of the things we're going to be discussing today about exactly what trauma is, how often first responders actually experience trauma, how those traumas can injure the brain and the brain's normal functioning, symptoms of being affected by work traumas, ways to recover, ways to heal, and ways to really love these great and honored professions and be able to retire healthy, well, and at peace, and be able to look back and feel good about all the good you're able to do throughout your career.
That's a great story and a nice framework, right? 10,000 peace officers. That's a significant size of population that you've worked with. And can you tell us a little bit about your journey that got you from a retired captain to now having 10 years and 10,000 folks that you've interacted with?
In 2010, which was when I was a lieutenant, I went to the FBI National Academy in Quantico, Virginia. That's a 10-week course for senior police managers from just not all over the country, but from all over the world. And one of the classes I took was emotional survival and spiritual wellness practices in law enforcement. So at that time, I had already had about 25 years in the profession. And how work affected me, probably more than anything else, was becoming what I call emotionally dead, where you just don't really feel things anymore. The only thing that really got me excited and interested in life was work. And I was becoming more and more isolated, detached and disinterested with people, with activities, not knowing that my actions were showing my family that they really didn't matter as much as they used to. Just becoming more and more shut down. My ex-wife would say I talked in 1 or 2 word sentences. And just kind of a general lack of caring. Didn't really care about much of anything. And that's not a healthy place to be. And my experiences at the FBI National Academy really show that there really is great hope and promise for people in the first responder profession. We don't have to just hope for the best and hope we don't become a victim, our families don't become a victim of this honored profession. There are things that we can do, that we can practice every single day, which really needs to be practiced every day, because every day our spirits are being assaulted by the traumas we experience. But every day there are ways, evidence-based strategies to practice and strengthen resilience, ideally with every call for service, and to actually recover proactively from the traumas each day and actually improve your overall peace of mind, health, and well-being.
So you mentioned detachment, you mentioned the one-word sentences. You gave us some insights into how this manifested itself in a very physical way, and you talked about evidence-based practices or solutions or tools. Could you expand on that a little bit more?
Yes. So just a brief overview. Wellness really involves physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual resilience and wellness. Those are the four components that make us human beings, that make you a good, effective, professional, compassionate first responder. And all four of those components of our humanness are interrelated and interdependent upon one another. So one's going to affect all the others. So if all we're doing is working out all the time, you're in great physical shape, but you're not really practicing mental, emotional, and most fundamentally spiritual wellness and resilience, eventually that physical health and emotional health are going to falter. And in my experience, what I learned, the number one lesson I learned more than anything else in 30 years in law enforcement, is this aspect of spiritual wellness and resilience, and that this truly is a vocation of the heart. And by spiritual wellness, what I mean is your capacity to love, to be helpful, to be useful, to be driven by your heart with compassion, to make a meaningful difference, your ability to consistently do as much good as you can, to affirm the good within you with each decision. It's your ability to have a higher purpose in these great professions beyond your self-interest, and to be connected to the noble calling of protecting and serving life, of serving people, of being the good amidst all the bad, of being connected to your colleagues and taking care of each other, and being connected to the community in meaningful ways. And probably more than anything else, the daily traumas of the profession really work to suffocate the heart, where it just kind of closes down, and that's when you really don't care about anything and you're disconnected. And so we really have to put our heart into our work every single day. That's that spiritual aspect of doing as much good as you can in compassionate, meaningful ways. Because if we don't, the job is likely going to eat you alive.
Yeah. I love how you focus on the heart, on the spiritual component and those four. We have a number of trainings as well and focus on that kind of overall resiliency and look at more of the seven components, tying in a few other pieces like the occupational. They've added that, which again, you're helping people to figure out and remind themselves why they love their profession. I think you do a phenomenal job with that. And obviously, as we know, some of the other things with the financial but I think really recognizing on that spiritual component, because you see a lot of horrific things in your career. And, even tying back to FBI NA, we are big supporters of the National Academy and a number of the chapters. What class were you?
241.
241. Okay. I'll have to, I don't know if you were in with a few of the folks that I know, but that emotional survival training, I've heard a lot about that. But yeah, I think this is great work that you're doing.
And thank you, Elizabeth. And by the way, my book, Bulletproof Spirit, has been now and still is for several years required reading at the FBI National Academy in their two wellness classes.
That's amazing. Congratulations.
Thank you. And also, for both of you, just and your listeners, I want to also really emphasize, because most first responders, when they think of trauma, they think of a shooting or a fight for their life, something really horrific. But trauma is really any experience that has the potential to affect you in a seriously negative way over a long period of time. Mm-hmm. And we have those experiences every day, at least several times a week. over the months and years, no wonder after a 20, 30-year career, our brains can be injured and not be functioning optimally, because trauma is both toxic, it's poisonous to our ability to function normally and to process life events without distressing emotional or psychological issues. And it's also cumulative. So it'll keep building up if we're not doing anything, hopefully daily, to work through it in positive, constructive ways.
So when you think about that cumulative effect over a 20 or 30-year career, it really can reach a point, I would imagine, that's just harmful to the person, right? And their ability to interact with their families, friends, community, and whatnot.
Well, that's why suicide is any first responder's number one cause of death. For police, it's typically more than all the other causes of death combined. Year in, year out, we lose about 120 to 140 peace officers to suicide every year. It's fire service, number one cause of death, EMS. It's very high with healthcare professionals, corrections officers. It's even higher. About 20% are going to suffer severe symptoms of post-traumatic stress. About 30% or so will have ongoing depression, anxiety disorders. 40% have serious sleep disorders. 25% or so will have a serious health issue based on accumulated stress and trauma. And almost 1 in 4 police officers are going to contemplate suicide at some point in their career. And this has nothing to do with people who might, or that there's something wrong with them, or they shouldn't have been a first responder in the first place. It is never, ever about that. It's never about what's wrong with you. It's always about what happened to you. And we have to get to the point in these professions where it's okay to be human.
Right.
It's okay to be distressed when a baby dies in your arms, when you work a crash scene where a whole family got taken out, all the senseless acts of violence, and just on and on and on. Like, you are not a human being if you're not altered in some way by that. And in my training classes, I always ask, and again, it's been 10 to 12,000, I always ask, are you the same person you were when you got hired? And I have yet to have one first responder say the job has not changed them or their family, their health and well-being in a significant negative way.
And how they manage that stress, right? I mean, looking at adaptive and maladaptive coping, I'm sure you go into that with your with the training, how they can, what do they do with that trauma, and when they go home, and are they, drinking a bottle of Jack at night, or are they instead going to work out, try to work on mindful techniques and breathing? Are those areas that you explore with them in your training of more of those adaptive coping skills?
Yes, definitely, and to give them the positive, the actual practices that work. Because if our people aren't trained to do anything better, and we just train them in the academy about the job and send them out there and hope for the best, when things start to distress them, what are they going to do? They're likely to drink. I know of an officer that drank 103 gallons of Crown Royal in 5 months. And you don't just wake up one day and say, I'm gonna do 104 gallons now before Christmas. I mean, it builds up over time. And in a profession that deals with trauma, especially trauma experiences daily, alcohol is the absolute worst possible thing that you can do. It will absolutely, seriously cripple your ability to recover from the traumas, to heal, to come to a sense of peace, to get good sleep, and on and on and on. I never drank, thank God, because who knows what would have happened to me. But I have seen it destroy so many lives, and we're twice as likely to become alcoholics in these professions than the general population, because they just haven't been trained what else to do.
Mm-hmm.
So as you talk and do these trainings and whatnot, are there signs that you try to present to the participants that if these things are happening, these may be early indications of headed towards bad outcomes in your life, whether it be alcoholism or other sort of challenges you may have?
Sure. One of the main red flags, of course, is somebody close to you. If somebody, your spouse, your life partner, or a good friend, a colleague, says, you're not quite yourself lately. What's wrong? Something's going on. Listen to them. right? They're just not making things up. They're just not seeing things that aren't there. So listen to the people closest to you who actually care about you, because they're coming from a place of wanting you to be your very best.
Mhm.
But one of the first effects of traumas is sleep. Sleep is usually the first thing that goes. 40% of us have serious sleep disorders, and a study of 5,000 peace officers found we sleep about 4 to 5 hours a day, and your brain cannot function long term on 4 to 5 hours of sleep. That's when you're in a really deep sleep. That's when your brain is really dealing with all of your life experiences and traumas and things, and trying to put them in the proper perspective and file them away in your memory without any associated distressing thoughts or emotions. So if you're not getting good, consistent sleep, your brain's never getting a chance to catch up, and it's becoming more and more vulnerable. Now, post-traumatic stress is an injury. It's not a mental disorder. It's not a sickness. It's an injury to your brain's ability to function optimally. So usually, inability to fall asleep, waking up several times during the night, the inability to fall back to sleep when you wake up, early morning wake up. I mean, all those things are a significant red flag that things are kind of building up and causing some internal wounds. Anger is a really big one. Finding yourself being irritable all the time, on edge, anxious, yelling at your family and over things that would never even bother you before, just constantly angry and upset and uptight, being anxious, a depression that just doesn't really go away, kind of just a sense of losing yourself, maybe things kind of spiraling out of control, becoming more and more isolated and detached and disconnected from normal activities, a lack of meaningful communication, not being able to really communicate and to share and to talk. Addictions, promiscuity. I was talking to a trauma professional up in Idaho just the other week that was saying in her practice, she thinks well over 50% of first responders have some form of sex addiction. So, all these maladaptive coping, substance abuse, the drinking. I mean, when your behaviors become things that were not part of your life before being a first responder,
Yeah,
then
right.
that's a major sign. And the effects of trauma typically just don't disappear on their own, right? If they're not faced, they will tend to get worse and worse over time. And just like everything else in medicine, it's all about prevention and maintenance. And the maintenance is the daily practice of wellness and resilience strategies, and increase more self-awareness, becoming more aware of how the job might be affecting you and your personal relationships, your health and peace of mind.
Absolutely. And try to be more proactive. I know, Gary, as you know, and Captain Willis, we help implement peer support teams, and do trainings with them, and looking at kind of the psychological first aid model, and offer mental wellness appointments, and all of those pieces, and the helpers, to work with individuals to build that toolkit of resiliency is so important. And like you were saying, with the family members, yeah, when your significant other is saying you just come home and getting that lazy boy, and you barely talk and you don't interact. I mean, that is important to hear from the people that love you, but also I really think the peer team members, those colleagues, really looking out for those types of behaviors at work and pulling them away and trying to get in front of it before it becomes a mental health issue or a behavioral issue, and turns into, that's when they're calling us for our psychologist do a fit for duty evaluation. Nobody wants to have a fit for duty evaluation, and when it could be prevented, or at least sidelined, to say, hey, what's going on? Like, what can we do to help you?
Exactly. And really all it takes when things are really not going the way you like is to be able to tell someone. It doesn't have to be anyone at your agency, but if you have a good, effective, confidential peer support team, or a supervisor that you trust, or a chaplain, or outside the agency, a trauma professional, a minister, a priest, a rabbi, a friend, your spouse. But to be able to say, something's going on inside I don't like. I
Mm-hmm.
might need some help. That is not that hard to say. Something's going on inside I don't like. I might need some help. Not saying that kills more of us than anything else, because once we acknowledge that and it's out, there are so many resources out there. I hope we get a chance to talk about EMDR in a little bit, but there are so many ways to actually not just to feel a little bit better, but potentially to heal from even the most severe traumas and post-traumatic stress. But our people just don't know about it.
Are you seeing a shift? You have been in this profession for, 30 years, and with public safety, law enforcement specifically, candidates coming in, I know our psychologists during those evaluation processes are having to spend a lot of time getting records, reviewing records, and they are noticing, and anecdotally, there is an increase in involuntary commitments of these candidates, even voluntary commitments, an increase in treatment, things you want to see. They are asking for help, they are on medication, they are doing those things. Are you seeing a shift with the folks that you're talking about, that these kids, so to speak, they want help, they're getting help, and they're asking for it and expecting it in the cultures of the law enforcement agencies in which they go in. They're wanting to go into that culture where that chief, that command staff cares. Yeah, are you seeing kind of a paradigm shift with that, and how they're managing trauma as compared to more seasoned folks?
Yes, there definitely seems to be improvement. The problem is we had so far to go. I mean, I started back in 1985 when I was 21 years old. Back then you could get shot and they'd say, "Hey, go put some dirt on that. You got radio calls," right? We just don't talk about it. It's just they thought the best way to deal with trauma was to move on.
Right.
Don't talk about it. Don't dwell on it, which is the worst thing that you can do. But the younger generations, just their whole consciousness is much more open. It seems to be more self-aware and to be more open and wanting to do whatever is needed to be their very best self. And the consistent message from the chief or sheriff all the way down needs to be something like, I need a healthy you. I need a healthy you at home. I need a healthy you at work. I want you to talk to peer support. I want you to talk to chaplain. I want you to go to a trauma professional. Those are the people that know what this job can do to you and ways to heal and recover. It's just not okay to ask for help. You're going to need help at some point in this career, at some point over 30 years, and that's okay. And we're here to help you and do whatever we can together to help you get to be your very best. And until we get to that point, we're going to keep losing 140 officers every year to suicide.
Well, I know with, many agencies are putting into their policy that, everyone goes through a wellness check or whatever you want to call it, but top down. When they're seeing, meaning the younger ones, the ones that have been in the profession for a long time, that are like, I don't need to go to that. But when they're seeing their leadership say, well, you are going, and I'm going too, that really is what is going to move things along and forward. And I think it is moving forward. So, yeah.
Absolutely. And in a lot of my trainings, I don't just talk about personal first responder wellness and resilience, but also organizational wellness. And basically that's limiting the dysfunction as much as possible and creating mechanisms of support and wellness from recruitment all the way through retirement and beyond. And part of that is for agency leaders and commanders to exemplify what it means for the daily practice of wellness and resilience. So you can speak with some authority when you recommend someone go talk to a trauma professional or seek a EMDR certified trauma professional. It stands for eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. You could go to EMDRIA and you can find a therapist in your area. There's over 20,000 in the United States, and they are specialists with trauma. And trauma really is a specialty. It's like going to your general practitioner doctor for a hip replacement. I mean, you're going to go to a surgeon that specializes in it, and trauma is the same. And EMDR is really an incredible method of healing recovery, especially for first responders, because it's not talk therapy. I've had it done myself, and an issue that bothered me off and on for 25 years. Whenever that memory got triggered, it went away after 2 sessions. And I hear stories similar to that all the time. It might not be 1 or 2 sessions, but it's not going to be 20 or 30. Like more likely than not, within a dozen sessions, you're most likely to start sleeping better, start feeling better, have much more patience, be able to deal with life in a much more reasonable way, or even hopefully get healed altogether.
Yes, I've heard many stories myself of people that have used that method and that has definitely helped them. And if that is something that you train on, or are you certified in as well, or is you have people that you recommend?
I always recommend it because it's a treatment that I experienced myself, and I had that success in 2 sessions. Yeah, there's lots of treatments for trauma. But EMDR has been around for 30 years. It's endorsed by the International Association of Chiefs of Police and by the World Health Organization. It's an absolute proven effective technique over relatively few sessions to more likely than not really get significant help.
Yeah. We actually just got back from IACP in Boston. Did you attend?
I did not go to that one, no.
Yeah, and I will say, being around mainly psychologists that are evaluators, I know that some of these clinicians have varying opinions on EMDR. Like you, I've experienced it myself, and while it took a little bit longer than 2 sessions. I just come from the idea that if it helps you, do it, because
Right.
just because a doctoral level professional or another clinician may say, oh, that's woo woo. Okay, well, woo woo may work. And also, I agree that there's been a lot of research that has come out and backed it, and having those stories like supporting as many agencies as we do and having relationships with, first responders and public safety professionals like yourself. It has worked, and that's what's amazing, and that's what you want to hear. You want to have these positive outcomes.
Exactly. And the International Association of Chiefs of Police are not going to endorse anything that doesn't work. Right.
Agree.
So and if you do it and it's not really working, go to a different trauma professional, because not all of them are the same, just like not all cops are the same. And you need to really connect and resonate with the person who you're working with. Or there might be another modality that could be more effective. The point is to realize you're not your normal self and to seek the help to restore your brain's normal functioning and your overall well-being.
Yeah, absolutely. I know one of our clinicians, who we do have some that work with folks managing trauma and have that EMDR, I guess, certification. But I remember many years ago, she said, you can even do that with yourself, like just going on a walk. Kind of that, without the music, without, that kind, the back and forth, just like where it's, that eye rapid movement. It even during, outside in nature walking can give you some of those same benefits as if you were there with a treatment provider. Well, Gary, what thoughts
Yeah.
are you conjuring up? I know we got a lot of stuff that we've covered so far. What are you thinking?
Yeah, and I know we are approaching our time limit, but what I've heard is, and I love the statement that you said, I need a healthy you and organizational wellness, right? I love those 2 ideas. And what really Captain Willis has come through to me is that you've created, or you've put some very specific change indicators out there, right? If you're behaving differently than you did before you took this role, if you're finding that those close to you are telling you that, hey, things are changed, things are different, right? That that you need to take action and you need to do something about it, or you're headed towards really some very staggering statistics about outcomes for people, right? So as we kind of bring this to a close, I'm curious what sort of, if there's some summary advice or advice that you just would like to leave the audience with.
Well, based on my 30 years experience and 10 years teaching, so it's 40 years now. My main advice is, it comes from Albert Schweitzer, which it's written of him. He's one of the most influential people who lived in the 20th century. Just a great humanitarian, won the Nobel Peace Prize for all his selfless humanitarian work of building hospitals and all kinds of stuff in Central Africa. And I love this quote because it matches perfectly with any first responder profession. It says, the purpose of life, in the first responder profession I would add, but the purpose of life is to serve and to do good, to have the will and compassion to help others. And those of us who are truly going to be happy and fulfilled and at peace are those who have figured out how to serve people. And the way to serve people is what we talked about with that spiritual element of compassion. Just asking yourself, no matter what you're involved with, what good can I do here? What's needed of me? How can I be helpful? How can I be useful? Being useful is one of the most basic human needs beyond love. People need to feel of value. They need to feel like their life, their sacrifice actually mattered. And we need to be proactive with that. And whether it's a kid crashed on a bike or a homicide scene, what good can I do here? How can I help? How can I serve in a meaningful, compassionate way to make a meaningful difference? If you consistently do that and focus on the good, all the good of these professions and the great opportunities to positively affect people's lives, that will give you, in my experience, and what I hear from so many other first responders, more of a chance to make it to retirement than anything else, and being perfectly healthy, well, and at peace.
That's a great sentiment and a great thought and a nice framework, I think, to bring this to a close. Elizabeth, any last thoughts from you?
I love that. And it made me think about, the statement, always look for the helpers. There's always the helpers out there, and look for the good, amongst everything you do and giving back. And you have definitely given, your whole career, and continuing on and empowering and supporting our protectors. And I just, it's been a pleasure meeting you. I hope that we can meet in person and run across each other in kind of the circuit, but I'm glad to know you and know that I can reach out and send people your way who are needing this type of training. Just appreciate your time. Yeah.
Indeed. Yes. Yes. Well, thank you again, Captain Willis, and we appreciate you spending a little bit of time with us today.
Take care.
All right, take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Mind Matters. Please give us your thoughts, and if you like this episode, feel free to share it with others. You can also find more content and choose to follow us on our Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn at the FMRT Group. Thanks, and we'll see you next time on Mind Matters.